I'll now demonstrate some of this. Okay, so first of all, I've probably said about 20 times that this is normal Uniface DSP development. So I'll now put my money where my mouth is and show that. Okay, so I just go into Uniface and I have a dynamic server page. Here's my outer page. It's got some containers in it. And if I just run that, we can see I just have my DSP app. I've built this with mobile in mind, so I've used responsive techniques. So what you can see is I've got a menu bar along the top, and as I shrink down to be more of a mobile type of form factor, we can see that the menu bar turned into a hamburger menu. So when it's big, it expands it because it's got the real estate too, and as I shrink down, I get a hamburger menu. I can log in and use the app, got my menu, etc., etc. So it is just a DSP development. I can quickly test that application on the mobile using the Previewer app I mentioned. So to do that, from my page, I just say File, Show QR Code, and I get a QR code on screen. If I now go to my mobile device, we can see I've already installed the Uniface Previewer, and that's available on the app stores, whether we're talking Google Play or the Apple iStore. So if I run the Previewer, what we can see is we've got a button called Scan Me. So if I say scan, point at the barcode, it scans the barcode. So as you can see with the Previewer, I've just pointed at the QR code and my app has loaded. I can test it, I can go in. You can see it looks like the DSP app I had because it's running the same code line. I haven't added any specific code or made very specific changes to make it run on a mobile. I've just developed my DSP solution and packaged it. In this case, the code I've written is using the barcode scanner plugin. So if I click scan, I click my button, and we can see the barcode scanner launches. I'll scan the same barcode, and we can see my code processes that barcode, it's read it, and there I've got it. It was a QR code, and it's given me the value of that QR code. Now, interacting with the phone functionality at that level might sound daunting at first, but it's actually quite straightforward. If I take a look at that component, barcode, I've just got a scan button, got the type, which was an edit box, which was output, and the value. If we look at the scan button, I've got a basic piece of proc code, so I've got a snippet of code, which I put into an include proc. And what we can see is ultimately it comes down to one line of code to call a plugin, and it's here, cordova.plugins.barcodescanner.scan. Speaks for itself, and then I just process the result. So it returns a result object and I read it. So pretty straightforward. If I hit the cancel button, for example, I pick that up, I cancel the scan, and in the rare event of an error, then I can read the error message. The key thing here is that we are just using Uniface functionality. We're using the web triggers and writing the code. Now the second type of plugin is a custom plugin. So the barcode scanner I mentioned, that plugin is one of the standard plugins we support, and all of the standard plugins we support are part of the Previewer. However, if you are using a custom plugin, naturally there's no way we can predict which custom plugins you will use. So in this case you then have to build the application yourself. Again, that's actually very straightforward, and I'll show you that now. So if I go to a startup shell, All I do is create a new startup shell as I would for any other Uniface development. The difference here is I pick the shell type and select mobile. So you can see we have Windows, server, character mode, but mobile is what we're doing. So the screen changes to be mobile based. And a number of the features speak for themselves. So name of the app, what are you calling it? App ID. Okay, maybe app ID doesn't speak for itself, but if I click on it, you can see we get a syntax hint which describes it for us. So basically, reverse notation of your domain name and a unique identifier. App version, just a number. The important one here, the URL of the first DSP, so the entry point into your hybrid app. App platforms, what am I building to? So Android or iOS. In this case, I'll actually just say Android. PhoneGap plugins or Cordova plugins, whichever you may be using. Barcode and Toast, so they're two of the supported ones. We've seen me do the demonstration of the barcode. Toast message is just a nice pop-up message rather than doing an ugly JavaScript alert. And also what I'm demonstrating here now is the use of that PhoneGap plugin I referred to earlier, so a custom plugin to allow me to do notifications. Notifications is a common piece of functionality. I mean, every mobile app you interact with probably uses notifications. It's not one of our standard plugins at this time, so you can just pick one of the many plugins out there to implement. Adding the notification plugin is very straightforward. Just the URL of the Git repository. The other settings I have in here are settings to say what is the orientation. I've said default, so basically landscape or portrait. And in terms of iOS, what's the target device? Well, I've said universal, so I want it to work on anything if I'm building for iOS. Author, that's me. And local, this is the resource wizard. So in here, I can pick the various icons, the various resolutions, and my splash screens. Point and click, browse to a file. I mentioned iOS has a lot more icons, so if I click on that, you can see many more icons you'd have to set. And this is where the resource wizard is powerful, because if I had to create the folder structures and get the naming standards exactly right for this many files in both portrait, landscape, and for Android in portrait, landscape, chances are I will make at least one mistake. By using a wizard, you can't make a mistake. And yeah, if you don't specify any icons, then you'll get the default splash screen and the default icons, which is just Uniface. Okay, so I mentioned that you don't actually compile the startup shell. All you do is click build. So we have a button here, build app. And what this does is points us towards the Uniface App Factory. Now, I've already got an account created with that, and I'm already logged in. If I weren't logged in, then I'd have the option to log in. I mean, you can see the log on button. And if I don't have an account, there'll be a link on this screen that takes you to the App Factory and allows you to create an account. As I'm already logged in, I will just click build. And as you can see, pretty straightforward, nice and quick. I've got the response saying, your projects are now ready for setup. To build those a website will be opened, etc., etc. So I do this and it will take us to the Uniface App Factory. And what we can see here is my application ready to be built. Now, because this is the first time I'm building the app, I have to specify the key store. If I was also building the iOS app, I'd have to specify the certificates and the provisioning profiles. But if I just go into my test application, which will be debuggable should I choose to debug, I come in and I pick my key store. Here's a key I created earlier. If I haven't actually created a key, I could just use the App Factory's key. In this case, the app will have the identity of our App Factory. So for real development and real production, you would create your own key. It was with that simple command line of key tool that you would have seen in one of the slides and will be available to you. It's in the documentation. And I would just pick the file that's generated and say upload. In this case, I'll say Uniface SME. I'll have the build number on the icon, so the App Factory will add that, and all I say is save and queue build. So if I go to the dashboard now, we can see that the application is building. It currently says 17 minutes to build. It never takes that long normally. Well, it's a bit like a Windows progress bar. We'll see it jump down really quickly. Now, in terms of distribution and making things easy, I mentioned that before. We have the App Factory companion app. So if I go into that on my device, what we can see is there's my app currently building. Okay, it's still estimating 17 minutes, but that doesn't matter. This makes distribution and sideloading of your apps, whether on Android or iOS, very simple. This companion app is available in the app stores. If I go to one that's been built earlier, I'll just point at anything random that we've built. That one's building at the moment. Let me find. So here's one I've built before, and when I go to the build, I can see details of when it was built. So this one was built 13 days ago, and then I can say install this build. When I click install, it will download the appropriate files and install them on my device. So I don't have to mess around emailing files around, putting them on different file servers, trying to download them and keep track of them, because I have the full tracking here and the audit, and can quickly point to a file and install it. The other thing that's nice is I can then click the release to testers. So as a developer, once I've completed my own unit testing, I can release it to the testing group. They'll get a notification, and then they can start testing the app. In the case that you've then installed your custom built app using the App Factory, I now have access to my custom plugins. So in the case of this app, I added the notifications. With the notification service I've used in this case, I have to start off by subscribing, and when I subscribe, you'll see an example of toast messages popping up. So here we can see it's loading my plugin, and there I've successfully registered. Now from a Uniface client server app, and it actually could be any app, I use Uniface's REST call-out capabilities to call the Google messaging service and send a message to my mobile device. Hello from Uniface client server. Send notification, so I'm making the REST call, there it is successful, and straight away on my mobile device the message has bounced to Google and I've received my toast notifications on my mobile device. Again, I said I could send it from any device, so I've got a similar component defined on my mobile device. So notify, and I'll send the message test 2, send. There we can see from Uniface test 2. Again, nice thing with something like notifications, if I'm outside of the app, so hello from Uniface minimized. If you look at my notification bar, which is actually quite busy at the moment, let me just clear it. Hope there was nothing important there. When I send the notification this time, I'm outside of the app, but there we go. I've got an icon up here. When I go down, there we can see a notification in the notification bar of Uniface, and when I click that, it will go back into the app. So all of that is actually quite straightforward. I I've talked about complicated concepts and complicated processes, but in Uniface terms, we've stuck to our Uniface ethos of encapsulating the complexity, and as you've seen, all we do is build our DSP solutions as we normally would and create a startup shell and click build. So 3 steps. Okay, so thank you for listening, and I'll now open the floor for questions. Okay, last call for questions, going once, going twice. Okay, thank you everybody. Goodbye.